She needed blood to survive. He offered his without a word. The room was silent, except for the soft humming of broken machines. The lights flickered weakly, barely holding on to power. The floor was cold, metal, covered in dust, and burned wires hung from the ceiling like dead vines. Cale stepped inside slowly, his boots making soft crunching sounds over shattered glass and debris. His flashlight scanned the wreckage. He was inside a downed alien ship, one that had crashed weeks ago during a solar storm. He didn't expect survivors. Everyone said it was hopeless, but still, something pulled him here, a strange signal repeating in a forgotten language, something crying for help. And then he saw her. In the center of the room was a pod, half broken. The glass cover was cracked, covered in frost. Inside it, lying still, was a girl, an alien girl. Her skin was bluish-gray, almost shining in the light. Her long silver hair spread like soft threads around her head. Her eyes were shut tight, lips cracked, face pale, chest rising slowly like someone on the edge of death. She didn't look dangerous. She looked lost. Cale checked the panel. It blinked red, life support failing. Underneath it, alien letters glowed weakly, but the translator slowly kicked in, and a message appeared. Warning, blood loss detected. Vital fluids critically low, species dependent. Transfusion required. Cale stared at it, confused. Blood loss, he whispered. The machine continued. Medical solution, not available. Closest match, Homo sapiens, blood type O+, high compatibility. His eyes widened. You need my blood, he muttered, glancing back at the girl. She looked no older than 20, if he guessed her species right. Her body was shaking now, her breath shallow. He looked down at his arm, then back at her face. He didn't know who she was, didn't know if she would even survive, and he definitely didn't know if she'd wake up friendly. But Cale didn't move away. He dropped his bag, rolled up his sleeve, and pulled out the emergency transfusion kit he carried for off-world missions. No one else came for you, he said softly, so I will. He connected the needle to his vein. Blood flowed slowly into the tube, and with careful hands, he placed the end into the pod's feeding port. It beeped, accepted the connection, and started the transfer. Cale leaned back against the wall, feeling the slow pull of energy leaving his body. His vision blurred a bit, but he stayed still, watching her face, watching for any sign she was still there. Minutes passed. The ship creaked and groaned like it might collapse at any time, but inside that broken room, time stood still. Then, her fingers twitched. Cale saw it, even in his dazed state. Her hand moved slightly, her head turned a little, her lips opened just a bit, and a soft breath escaped, a real breath. Her eyes snapped open, deep red, glowing like twin suns in the dark. They stared directly at him, sharp, confused, hungry. Cale tried to speak, but his lips were dry. He felt dizzy. His head dropped slightly, his body weak from the blood loss. She blinked slowly, trying to understand. She looked at the tube, then his arm, then back at his pale face, and suddenly, her expression changed. Shock, fear, pain, guilt, it all flashed across her face. She sat up fast, breathing hard, pulling the tube out of her mouth. Blood still warm inside her, strength returning by the second. She crawled over to him, and caught his shoulders before he collapsed fully. Why? She whispered in her language. Her translator blinked green and repeated the word in basic. Why? Cale gave her a small smile, too tired to speak. He just raised his hand and tapped her nameplate. Virea, he murmured. You're alive. Then his eyes closed, his body going limp in her arms. Virea held him tightly, confused and trembling. She had never felt warmth like this, never touched someone who gave without demand. She was trained to fear humans, to fight them if needed, but this one gave her life when she was moments from death. Without saying a word, the machines had stopped humming, the pod's light faded, and the only sound left in the cold wreck was her breath as she held him close and whispered something her people had long Forgotten, thank you. But outside the wreck, someone else had heard the pod's final signal, and they were coming. Virea sat silently in the dark corner of the wreckage, her arms wrapped tightly around the human who had saved her, his body warm but growing weaker. She had never seen a human before, not this close, and definitely not like this. Her kind believed humans were selfish creatures, unpredictable and brutal. But the one lying unconscious in her lap had done the unthinkable. He had given his blood, his life, with no words, no demands, just trust. Her red eyes flicked to the transfusion line, now empty, the color of his blood still vivid in her mind. It had tasted strange at first, different from her kind, but full of energy, powerful and raw. She could feel it inside her still, her body healing faster than it ever had before, her senses sharper, her heart beating louder. Soft beep echoed from the corner of the pod. Then silence again. Everything around her was broken, power nearly gone. Outside was a dead planet of ice. No signals, no roads, no cities, just snow and sky and freezing wind. She needed to move him, or he would die. In the cold she leaned close, listening to his breathing. It was shallow, faint, each breath a struggle. Her hands were shaking, not from hunger now, but from fear. She had only just woken up, and already the one who saved her was slipping away. She placed her hand gently over his chest, feeling the rhythm slow. Her race had rules, strict ones, about what blood meant. It wasn't just medicine, it was bonding. Sacred. Forbidden between species. Sharing it was like sharing your soul. And he had done it, without knowing. Vera whispered his name for the first time, reading it from the tag clipped to his gear. Kale, she said softly. You didn't even know me. Her legs moved on instinct, strong again thanks to him. She stood and lifted him in her arms. Surprised by how light he felt, he groaned a little, his head leaning into her neck, his breath brushing her skin. She stepped over the wreckage carefully, dodging sharp metal, broken glass, and unstable flooring, each step echoing into the frozen silence of the planet outside. A blizzard had started again, soft white flakes swirling just beyond the cracked hull, biting winds sneaking into the wreckage through broken panels. She didn't care. She pulled a torn thermal blanket from a supply locker and wrapped it around him, then stepped out into the snow. The wind hit her like a scream, cold and sharp, but she kept walking, holding him close, her eyes searching the distance. She remembered something, an emergency shelter built into the nearby ridge. If she could reach it, maybe she could get help. Maybe the old systems still had heat. Maybe footsteps, soft and crunching, followed her, but not hers. She stopped and turned, red eyes glowing in the wind, scanning nothing. She kept walking, but the feeling remained. Someone was watching, or something. Suddenly, a shadow moved behind the wreckage, fast, low to the ground. Not human, not like her. Ithervira growled low in her throat, protective instincts rising. She tightened her grip on Kale and started moving faster. Toward the ridge. The wind grew worse, cutting through the blanket, her skin stinging, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. If she stopped now, Kale would die. And she wasn't ready to let that happen, not after what he'd done. As she climbed the rocky path, she saw it, a cracked metal door, half buried in snow. She kicked it hard. It didn't budge. She kicked again, her strength returning in bursts. And finally, the door slid open with a grinding scream. Inside was darkness, but the air was warmer, just enough to make her lungs ache with relief. She laid him gently on a padded bench, using the last of the emergency rations to start a weak power core. Lights flickered on dimly, showing old supplies, medical kits, and a single bed. He moaned softly, his eyes fluttering open. Barely. You made it, he whispered, voice hoarse. She nodded, kneeling beside him. Because you gave me a chance, she said. Now I give it back. He smiled faintly, eyes closing again, trusting her without fear. Even outside, the shadow watched. From a distance, eyes narrow, breath fogging in the cold air. A device in its hand blinked. Red target found. Send orders. Terminate the human Vera. Didn't know it yet, but saving. Kale had made her a traitor to her race, and they were coming for both of them. The wind outside howled louder now, shaking the old shelter walls like a beast scratching to get in. But inside, the silence was heavier, thicker. The only sound was Kale's weak breathing and the soft hum of the emergency generator Viraya had managed to waken. She sat by his side, watching him closely, one hand on his chest, feeling every slow rise and fall. His skin was cold, even under the blankets, and she could feel the weight of what he'd lost. He had given her too much, and now it was her turn to give something back. She reached into the supply case beside the wall, finding ancient medkits marked in alien symbols. Most of them were dried up or shattered, but one vial remained, an energy booster, meant for battle recovery. Dangerous in the wrong blood, but possibly life-saving. Now her hand trembled as she opened it. She had never used one before, but she had studied enough to understand the risk. She injected it slowly into his arm, whispering a quiet prayer in her old language, something her people rarely used anymore. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Kale gasped. His eyes snapped open, wide, full of pain and confusion. His body jerked and arched as if hit by lightning, and then fell still again, breathing heavier now. Strongavira didn't smile, but her eyes softened. "You're not dying," she whispered. "Not while I still breathe." Suddenly the shelter's old comms panel sparked to life. A voice crackled through, cold and sharp, speaking in her native tongue. "Traitor detected. Target confirmed. The blood-bound human is to be eliminated. Stand down and surrender for execution." Her heart stopped for a second. She knew this would happen. The moment she tasted his blood, the moment she protected him, she had broken her people's sacred laws. And now they had sent the executioners. Silent shadows who never failed. She looked down at Kale, still unconscious again, his fingers twitching slightly. He had no idea he was now hunted by an entire culture, just because he chose to save her. She turned to the old panel and ripped it from the wall. "No," she growled. "You won't touch him." A sudden slam echoed outside the door. Snow fell from the ceiling as someone or something landed hard outside. Viraya stood quickly, grabbing the sharp metal rod from the corner and stepping between the door and Kale. The door creaked slowly, then flew open with a deafening blast. Wind and snow pouring in like a storm, and in the middle of it stood a tall, armored figure with glowing red eyes and a blade humming with dark energy. Vira's eyes narrowed. "Executor," she said, voice like steel, "you broke the blood code." The figure replied, stepping inside, "You are no longer one of us." "He saved me," she said. "He bled for me when no one else even came, and for that, he dies." The executor raised his weapon. Vira lunged without warning, slamming into him with a cry that echoed through the cold night. Metal clashed, sparks flew. Her strength was wild, new, enhanced by human blood and raw emotion. The executor fought back hard, slicing across her shoulder, but she didn't fall. She twisted around him, slammed his head against the wall, and roared. As the blade fell from his hand, he kicked her back, and they stared at each other, breathing heavily, one loyal to law, the other loyal to life. She looked toward Kale. "I won't let you have him," she said, "even if I have to die here." The executor paused and then smiled. "Then let's make it quick." They charged Aganan. The shelter shook with the sound of war. Reborn, the room smelled like burning wires and blood. The old shelter lights blinked weakly, showing flashes of the fight. Vira, moving like lightning, the executors slashing with deadly precision. Their bodies slammed into walls, metal bent under their strength. Kale still lay unconscious on the bench, unaware of the storm raging just meters away from him. Vira was faster now, her strength unfamiliar, but growing. She could feel the power from Kale's blood still running through her veins, not just healing her, but changing her. Her people had always feared mixing with humans. They called it weakness, impurity. But this was something else. Something fierce and bright. The executor landed a blow to her ribs, knocking the air from her lungs. She stumbled, but did not fall. She gritted her teeth, stepped back, and then launched forward with a scream that shook the walls. Their weapons clashed again. Metal screeching, sparks flying. Outside the wind roared, snow piling at the door. And above all, that Vera heard it. Kale's heart beat was stronger. She turned for just a second, her eyes softening as she saw his chest rising steadily now. His hand twitching again. He was fighting to come back. And she couldn't let this end. Before he woke up, the executor used her distraction, slamming her into the side wall, debris crashing around her. He stood over her now, weapon raised, eyes glowing. You should have stayed frozen, he growled. You were pure once. I'm more alive now than I ever was, she hissed, and with a sudden twist, she grabbed a piece of metal pipe from the floor and drove it into his shoulder, not deep but enough to push him back. She rolled to her feet, breathing hard, her body bruised and bleeding, but her eyes burned bright, brighter than his. She picked up his dropped blade and turned it toward him. You forget one thing, she said, stepping closer. I'm not just fighting for myself anymore. Suddenly, Kale groaned. The executor turned sharply. That was his. Mystica Vera didn't hesitate. She struck fast, the blade slicing across his armor, not killing him but enough to send him crashing into the console, sparks exploding everywhere. She rushed to Kale's side, pulling him up gently. He blinked at her, dazed, his voice dry. What's going on? She smiled softly, brushing his hair back. You came back? She said. They came for you, but I didn't let them take you. He looked past her at the smoking corner of the shelter, the figure of the executor, barely moving. Are we safe? He asked. She didn't answer, because they weren't. The executor was already getting up, slow, furious. And something in his armor clicked, sending out a beacon signal through the air. More were coming. Vera's eyes widened. She grabbed the emergency flare from the wall and tossed it outside into the snow, hoping anyone would see it. We can't stay here, she said, lifting Kale again, despite the pain. More will come. He looked at her weakly, trying to stand on his own. I can walk. He lied. She gave him a look that said she didn't believe it, but helped him anyway. Together, they limped through the burning shelter, past the fallen enemy, past the cracked door, into the snowstorm waiting outside. As they disappeared into the white, the executor raised his hand to his cum device, blood leaking from his cracked helmet. Send the hunters, he whispered. The traitor has chosen her path. Inside the shelter, the wind blew harder, blowing out the last light, and, far above, ships began to descend from the clouds. Snow crushed beneath their feet as Virea pushed forward, her arms wrapped around Kale, guiding him step by step through the blizzard. The world outside the shelter was a nightmare of white and wind, their path covered in fresh ice, visibility reduced to nothing beyond a few meter scales. Had leaned against her shoulder, his breath sharp, his body still weak, but his eyes were open now, watching her face closely as she led him through the cold. You're not like the others, he said softly, his voice raspy. Vera didn't answer at first, her red eyes scanning the horizon for any shape, any shadow that didn't belong to the land. Then she finally spoke, her voice low. I wasn't supposed to survive, she said, and you weren't supposed to care. Kale chuckled weakly. Bad at following rules, I guess. A distant sound made her freeze mid-step, a low rumble in the clouds. Not thunder. Engine-ish pulled him toward a narrow ridge of black stone, using it as cover, and crouched low, hiding behind it just as two dark ships streaked overhead, scanners glowing, engines leaving hot trails in the snow. She held him close, shielding him from the heat blast, and waited until they passed. They're tracking us, she whispered. They won't stop until we're dead. Kale looked at her, his hand slowly reaching up to touch her cheek, cold against her warm skin. I'd rather die with you than live without meaning, he said. Varia blinked, stunned. No one had ever spoken like that to her, not even her own kind, in her people's world. Emotions were kept inside. Loyalty was to law, not to life. But here, in the middle of nowhere, hunted, dying, and broken, she felt something stir in her chest. It was dangerous. It was forbidden, but it felt real. They moved again, deeper into the mountains. Snow falling harder now, and Virea saw something in the distance, a faint glow. Not from the sky, but from the ground. She followed it, guiding Kale into a small canyon, where an ancient alien transport station sat buried in ice. The doors were half open, rusted and frozen, but they forced their way in. Stepping into a warm chamber lit by faint golden light, machines hummed quietly. Still breathing after HFY, laid Kale down gently on a padded bench, and searched the station. Her hands touching old panels, searching for anything that still worked. To her surprise, a voice answered, a soft female tone, speaking in her language. "Welcome, traveler. Emergency shelter activated." Lights turned on, doors sealed shut. Heat began to rise. Slowly Kale breathed easier, the color returning to his face. "You did it," he whispered. "We're safe for now." Virea sat beside him, her eyes watching the door. "No," she said, "they'll find us again." He reached for her hand, lacing his fingers with hers. Then, "Let them come," he said. "They'll find two of us standing, not one of us begging." Her heart raced, not from fear but something else. She leaned her head against his shoulder, and for a moment, in the soft hum of ancient machines, and the warmth returning to the air, the war outside felt far away, but peace never lasts far above them. One of the ships slowed as it scanned the canyon walls. Red light blinked once. Target acquired. The warmth inside the shelter was like a soft breath after drowning. Steam rose from their clothes as the frost melted slowly. Kale leaned back on the cushioned bench, his skin no longer pale, his pulse steady again, but his eyes were fixed on Vera, not with fear, but something deeper, something that neither of them dared to name. Yet she paced quietly across the room, her boots echoing against the metal floor. The ancient alien systems pulsed around them, golden light washing over old stone symbols and curved metal beams. This place was older than both their races, forgotten by time, but it had protected them. Like a cradle, Vira stopped suddenly, standing before a black pillar in the center of the room. Her hand brushed over it, and the surface lit up under her fingers. Alien script flickering into life. The translator device on her wrist buzzed faintly. Struggling to keep up, Kale sat up slowly. "What is it?" he asked. Voice still weak, she stared at the glowing symbols, her voice quieter than before. "It's a blood code terminal," she said. "These places were used during the ancient wars when two lives became one. Through blood." Kale blinked, confused. "Like what I did for you." She nodded slowly, her fingers trembling as she turned toward him. "You didn't just save me," she whispered. "You bonded with me." Kale frowned. "I didn't mean to. I just wanted to help." "I know," she said, taking a step closer. "And that's why it matters. Our bond wasn't forced or ordered. It was given freely." The pillar glowed brighter, and a thin beam of light scanned across them both. A soft chime echoed in the chamber. "Bloodlink confirmed," the machine announced in a calm tone. "Life bond detected. Connection irreversible." Kale looked at her, unsure what it meant. "So we're connected now?" "Yes," she whispered, "in the eyes of my people. And now, in the eyes of this place too. You and I are life-bound, soul-connected, until one of us dies." Silence filled the room like thick fog. Kale stood slowly, using the wall for balance, then walked over to her. He looked into her glowing red eyes and smiled softly. "I'm not afraid," he said. "Not of you, not of this." Vera swallowed hard. "You should be," she said, "because this bond comes with more than connection. It comes with cost." He raised an eyebrow. "What kind of cost?" She looked away, her voice bitter. "If I die, you'll feel it. If you suffer, I'll feel it too. And if one of us is killed through betrayal, the pain destroys the other." Kale stepped closer, reaching out to touch her hand. Then we protect each other, he said. It's simple. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to wrap herself in his voice, his strength, his warmth, but the truth was rising like a shadow behind her thoughts. Her people would never allow this, and now that the bond was confirmed, they would act fast. Not just to kill but to erase. The station trembled slightly, not from old age, but from an outside force. She turned sharply. The scanners showed a ship descending slowly outside, bigger than the first two, black and gold, carrying a flag that chilled her blood. The elder scale followed her gaze. What now? He asked. Face turned hard, her voice firm. Now they send the ones who don't miss. He took a deep breath. Then we better give them something they'll remember. She smiled then, a sad, fierce smile, and picked up a long blade from the rack near the wall. The same moment, a deep voice echoed through the chamber, broadcasted through the air. Vira, of Clan Carol, you have violated sacred law and bonded with a human. Open the door and surrender the outsider, or face judgment by the blood flame. Kale looked at her. You gonna open the door? No, she said, walking toward it. I'm going to set it on fire. The chamber door pulsed red as pressure built on the other side. Virea stood tall with the alien blade in her hand, her eyes glowing like twin stars. Behind her stood Kale, still weak but no longer afraid. The blood bond had awakened something. In both of them something unbreakable. The voice came again, louder this time. Deep and ancient, you have one last chance, Virea. Surrender the human and your death will be painless. She looked back at Kale, her heart pounding, her mind screaming. But her soul was calm. He saved me without words, she whispered. Now I speak for him with my life. Kale touched her shoulder gently. You don't have to do this alone, he said. I'm not, she replied. Not anymore. Then the blast came. The doors exploded inward as fire and smoke filled the chamber. Elite warriors stepped through, tall, armored, armed with weapons forged in tradition, their eyes fixed on the human first, ready to strike. But Virea moved like lightning. She met them head-on, her blade dancing like a storm. Sparks flew as metal clashed. Ancient stone cracked beneath their feet. She moved with grace, rage, and something new. Lovekale ducked behind cover, using an old pulse rifle from the wall. He wasn't a soldier, but he wasn't helpless either. He fired carefully, covering her blind spots, trusting her every step. Their rhythm was perfect, not trained, but natural. 2 enemies fell, then 3, but more poured in. Vera was bleeding now, cuts across her arms and shoulder, but she didn't stop. The commander stepped forward, taller than the rest, his eyes cold. You've broken our laws, he said. This bond will end with fire. No, she growled, her blade lowering. It ends with choice. She dropped the weapon. Kale stood beside her, matching her defiance. We choose each other, she said, and if that's death to you, then so be it. The commander hesitated. The other warriors froze. No one had ever said that before, not to them, not in thousands of years. And then, something impossible happened. The blood terminal behind them lit up again, brighter than before. Its beams shot into the air, sending a pulse across the canyon. The ancient systems had recorded everything. The fight, the bond, the sacrifice. It transmitted across long-dead satellites, reaching places lost to time. And somewhere, far above, a council watched and chose. The warriors received a new signal. Stand down. The commander read aloud, confused. She is no longer exiled. Virea blinked. What? The council has recognized the bond, he said slowly, lowering his weapon. The law has changed. Kale stared at her in shock. You rewrote your people's rules, he whispered. No, she said, tears in her eyes. We did. The warriors left one by one, silent, uncertain. The chamber was quiet, a gun only, the sound of 2 hearts beating. In sync remained Vira, collapsed to her knees, exhausted. Kale caught her gently, holding her close. You did it, he said. You really did it. She leaned into him, her forehead resting against his. You offered your blood without a word, she said softly. I will spend my life speaking for you. Outside, the snowstorm faded above them. Stars returned to the sky and, deep in the heart of an old world, a new story began, not of war, but of unity, of a human who gave too much, and an alien girl who gave it back together. Life bond